Good morning, folks. How are we doing? Wonderful. Everyone's really excited to be talking about spills? Not even a little bit. I appreciate the honesty out here. This is wonderful. Does everyone know how to use these things? Oh, okay. Well, then we're going to get excited. We're going to talk a little bit about the principles of spill response. Oh, yeah, no, come on in. Come on in. Couple things guide what we do when there's a spill. One, the smaller the spill, the easier it is to pick it up, and the less off-gassing it does. So if you can contain it when it's this big, instead of when it's this big, you're not breathing in as much fumes. We're going to talk about personal protective equipment. We'll talk a little bit about legal responsibilities, and you're going to need to be aware that there is environmental legislation. We can cover that off. Hey, there's environmental legislation. Check. Some general steps to using the spill response stuff, and then spill kit contents. We're actually going to go out to the floor afterwards. I don't remember where Shauna said. Do you remember where Shauna said? We're going to find a spot. We're going to throw some stuff on the ground, and then we'll pick it up. But we'll go through your spill kit, and we'll talk about each individual things, not just this stuff, because there's a little bit more in your kits than just this. Before we talk about the materials, when we're looking at how do we use spill materials, we probably want to start with what spill materials do we need. Before you know what you need to know what things you have that might need to get cleaned up. Do you guys have acids in here? No? Nobody uses acid? What's the most hazardous chemical that you guys have in your department? Is this all one department?
We deal with the same chemical.
Okay.
I would say we never have a spill of catalyst, and that was terrible.
Okay.
I would say that was the worst one we had.
Okay.
Maybe when we spilled gun wash on this, but this one was...
How much spilled?
I think one of the lines broke. Were you here when that happened? I think so. One of the lines just broke and it was just spilled.
Oh, okay. So all of it. 45 gallons?
No, I wasn't all of it, but I think we were able to kind of hold it.
Okay, wonderful. That's the best thing in the world is when you can stop the spill before it lets everything go. Having a look at, how are we handling chemicals? How much chemicals are we storing at the workstation? If you use a half liter of stuff per day, maybe don't store a 5-gallon pail at the workstation. Store that on a spill pallet and just go and get that half liter that you need at the start of each day. We're spill catalyst. What's the hazards with catalyst in your department? Your particular catalyst? Is it a carcinogen? Should you be wearing respirator protection? What kind of respirator cartridges should you wear? Or are they the pink flat ones?
Yeah.
Well, the pink flat ones?
We use the organic filters, organic material filters.
Organic vapor. Yeah, you got it.
That's the one, yeah.
Right, those flat pink ones, only for dust.
Yeah.
If you have an organic vapor cartridge that has a pink cage over top of it, that might be telling you that it's also got a dust filter in there. So have a look. The color coding on the cartridges is telling you something. We're gonna jump past this. So we're gonna jump past this one as well. Failure to plan is planning to fail. This here is a piece of equipment, two pieces of equipment that inject caustic or acidic chemicals into a food production process to help sterilize the lines on a regular basis. Problem is that the acid and the caustic actually eat away at the tubes that filter them in. So on a regular basis, they just let go. There's a leak. That's what all of this that you're seeing here is. So if they know that every 10 months it's going to spring a leak, they should put it on a PM schedule to replace those lines every 8 months. Simple as that. What we see down here is, now this is an acid line, This aggressive spill material, this acid-only spill material, it changes color when it's used up. So it starts off yellow or yellowish, and then as the acid drips and the material absorbs, it starts changing color. And when it's fully absorbed, it's that bright pink. And now walking past, I know that this needs to be changed out. Make sense? Failure to plan is planning to fail. Think about in your own department, and if you haven't thought about it yet, take a look next time you're walking through. This is a big spill. That's acidic. It's changed the patina on the stainless steel table. That's how often it's being spilled. You can see that there. When I walk through, I know that that's a spill area. Let's plan for it. Maybe we need a removable liner. Maybe we need these things to sit in an acid-resistant tub. Just having it, and you can see it's at the edge here, and we saw it on the floor, just having it sit there and leak and then spill off the side uncontrolled, that's not a great idea. And we don't want to spend a ton of time cleaning up spills. We want to spend time making product. That's why we're here. So anytime that we can control that, that's going to be far preferable. So start with, where are we having spills? And even if you're not having spills right now, or it's not something that gets talked about on a regular basis, walk through and see where you've got staining on the shop floor. This, super common in machine shops. This doesn't happen here, of course, but other places I've heard. Oh, there's a spill, and someone will throw a bunch of the absorbent material on, and so I've done my job, and they walk away. That's it, they're done. They're not doing anything else with it. Trouble with that is eventually you end up with 8 inches of that absorbent material under the machine. Weighs 300 pounds because it's soaked up all of everything. It's not doing anything, and it becomes this sort of concrete, solid material there that it's going to take hours and hours to chip away. This isn't used up, but it's not doing anything. That needs to be cleaned up. This here is ready to be cleaned up as well. This here is ready to be cleaned up. But again, rather than doing a cleanup, let's get an acid-resistant tub in there that contains it. Then you can either use a pad or the absorbent material, and it's this tiny area that you've got to clean up, not this larger one that could be uncontrolled. This was a neat one. It leaks here because, again, it destroys itself. But instead of running this line like this and having it drip all along the way, they made this hose an extra 6 inches longer and gave it a low spot. So now all the drips happen here. They know that it's going to keep tearing itself apart. So what they do is they build in the failure point, and now they only have to protect against it here. Super smart idea. This one here, lots of leaking over here, but it's tough to see in the picture. There's a low spot in the floor that runs down to this drain. So that's on purpose. They're containing all of the spills here because they know the machinery is just going to keep doing that.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is there not a better way to protect against acids, like with the material that they're using, tubing and all that?
Not that they've figured out yet.
Okay.
And there may be some considerations. Like this is a metal-to-metal joint that's failing because the acid is actually eating the metal. It's breaking down that contact between the threads, and it's pretty intense. Maybe they could go one solid piece, but there still has to be a joint, and eventually it's going to break it down. And they can't spend $1 million on tubing.
Yeah, because I don't think in any of our processes we have a expected failure point for a lot of our stuff. You know, we have those PMs, those same maintenance PMs for a lot of our tubing to change regularly. But
sure.
We don't expect the failures to happen.
No, ideally not. This is a worst case scenario. If you guys are thinking at worst case scenario, managing what you actually have, easy peasy. Walking past the paint line, I'm hearing the pumps go psst, psst, psst. look at the joints there, the connections, have a look at the floor. Is there a lot of spills there? When does it happen? It's probably not mechanical failure. The spills are happening during changeovers, and that's a different thing. But look for this in your area. These guys are stuck with what they've got. Now, everyone familiar with granular absorbent? I'm sorry, it's like with Kleenex. I would call it Zorbol, but Zorbol is an actual brand name. Multizorb is another. There's one that has something to do with a Ninja. I don't remember the full one, but the Ninja part of the branding I remember. This is like kitty litter, but it's not kitty litter. I want to say diatomaceous earth is what makes it up. Nice. Reg is confirming, and so that's it. Yes, perfect. Great stuff. Kitty litter doesn't do the same job. It does not function the same. Don't use kitty litter. You've got the right material here. And we did a video a couple years ago on how to use that material. And let's have a look.
Now let's clean up an oil spill. Don't worry folks, it's canola oil, no extra PPE required. As with all spills, start with putting absorbent material around the spill to contain spreading, and then cover the top of the spill. Remember, the smaller the surface area of the spill, the easier it's going to be to clean up. After allowing the absorbent material to sit for 15 minutes, it's time to start the next phase of the cleanup. You can see here on broom cam, the stain from the oil is still visible, and the surface of the floor will be slightly slippery. Pull fresh absorbent material onto the spill and work it into the spill with your broom or your boot. Depending on the product that has been spilled, it may not be advisable to use your boot to work the absorbent material into the spill. In those instances, you can continue to use the stiff bristled broom. Use the broom to pull fresh material on top of the spill, place the broom on top of the absorbent material, and use firm downward pressure as you move the broom back and forth. You're not just pushing the material across the top of the spill, you're working it into the concrete. All traces of the spill are now gone and the floor will be safe to walk on. Consult your waste disposal contractor for information on how to dispose of the spill material for your specific chemicals.
Okay, so you just want me to put down some of this oil, right?
Yeah, just get it down.
Just get it down? Okay,
Yep.
sure. Here we go. Like, how's that? Is that good?
Whoa, not half of Alberta's production.
But you said, like, put it down.
Oh, you had one job.
I'd like to draw your attention to this shade. Nathan is an avid fisherman, but a mediocre Call of Duty Warzone player. That was included before I wrote his performance reviews. That's granular absorbance. We're gonna go out to the shop floor, we're gonna spill some water, someone's gonna have to donate a little bit from their bottle, and then we're actually gonna clean it up. You guys will see it real time. It'll look just like that, except slightly more three-dimensional. It's great stuff. Couple of things to note. That first thing I did was spread that material around. The smaller the spill, the easier it is to clean up. When you put the material across the top of it, it's no longer off-gassing. And that's the key. I once, we had a similar flat line to what you guys have. And so on Friday night, when production was done, we take one end of the lines, put them into a 45-gallon drum of thinner 319, and then put a return line into the drum, and it would just cycle through all weekend, as long as the lead hand remembers to put the return line back in the drum. If they don't, about an hour after all of the production people go home, security starts to smell something funny. What is that? Oh, 45-gallon drums across the entire floor. Yeah. So I'm standing there and I'm cleaning it up. I'm cleaning it up because I know this. I've taken the training. I know how to use the material. So I've got 4 or 5 bags of the Zorbol on it. Start to get a bit of a headache. You know those headaches, they start back here at the base of the skull and start to work their way forward until they're right behind your eyes and throbbing. It was that. About 10 minutes in, I've got that headache. Another 5 minutes in, oh man, stomach doesn't feel good. It's a little stick, but it's almost lunchtime. I'm probably just hungry. Another 10 minutes in and, I gotta go sit down. I don't feel very good at all. Get outside and sitting down. Oh, hey, there's a piece of paper that tells me about this. So I get one of my guys I was working with to go back in and get the SDS. Read through the SDS and it says, hey, don't stand in the middle of a 45-gallon puddle of this huffing the fumes. Turns out that's a bad thing. I was only able to read it after sitting outside for about 5 or 10 minutes. But if you get down to the first aid section, in case of overexposure, remove to fresh air. Was not a good experience. I do not recommend it. The smaller the spill, the easier it is to clean up and getting that entire surface area, because it's not the entire spill that's off-gassing. It's just what's exposed to the air. So the less there is exposed to the air, the less the off-gassing you have. Now, that's what you're seeing here. We've got the world's most clean oil spill with the socks being used to go around this spill. And these are really handy. Throw them on the floor, step on them to flatten them out, put weights or someone else's work boots, not mine, use his, up against them to hold the shape. And we've got lots of stuff we can do with this. That one and this one are universal. This one is oil only. Can you spot the difference? That's right. Gray is universal. Now, if you throw this sock onto a pond that has an oil spill, it's going to go and fall right to the bottom because it absorbs water as well. This one, specially designed so that it's only going to suck in hydrocarbons, gasoline, oil, things like that. That's why you can use it on top of water. Let's have a look at what that looks like.
This video will give you a unique view on hydrocarbon-only absorbent materials. The spill is 10W30 oil and water. The pads being used are oil-only pads that will not absorb water. You can tell by their color coding. Often the universal absorbent pads will be gray in color, with the oil-only pads being white. Aggressive or acid spill materials are often yellow. You can see water beading on the surface of the pad while underneath the oil has been absorbed and locked in. Many of the pads are designed to float for hours on the surface of water, but they won't float forever, so prompt disposal after cleanup is finished is still necessary. As the pads are spun around, the leading edge can be seen soaking up the oil and locking it in place while the water on the surface of the pads beads up and moves around. These are great for containing and cleaning spills where release to the environment is a concern, such as your facility's stormwater runoff system, or whenever oil and water are present together in the spill. Another great use is as a drum top pad for your oil filling stations. These pads only soak up petroleum-based products and can help keep these areas clean, although pads should still be changed regularly. Hydrocarbon-only pads are a great tool for your spill kit, and understanding how and when to use them in your shop can be invaluable.
Boom. Showtime, bud.
We're there?
We're there. Right on that lens.
Sorry for the wind. We're gonna do one more because I don't know that I have the patience to sit here for.
Oh, that's cool. That's, yeah, wow.
About 24 hours with those pads that it'll sit on top of the water without absorbing any water. So, you know, leave them overnight, bring them back. These ones here, they're gonna soak up all that water and the oil almost immediately. Do you guys have any places where you've got a drum and then you've got some kind of a pump, either electric or manual, and you pump stuff out of the drum into smaller containers? You got spills across the top of those drums?
Yeah.
One of these pads, and these pads usually come this size and they're perforated so you can make them smaller. You set one of these pads down on top of that, and then it just catches all those spills. You're not putting the paint gun or the cups, whatever it is that you're using them with, you're not putting them down in the mess, you're not tracking it all over the place, it's not getting on the tools. It's super handy. Now what we see here is an acid spill kit. That bright yellow color, that tells us that it's for acids. It's color coded. There's going to be either built into the material or completely separate neutralizer. Depending, you know, this one says caustic, this one is for acids, and I can't read because this picture was taken with a potato, but I can't read what that says, but something else. For those, what you do, oh no, there's a spill, you grab the neutralizer, and that's going to take away a big chunk of the hazard. Now, if the safe work procedure for working with that chemical says wear a respirator, the procedure for cleaning up that chemical is also going to be wear a respirator. If the liquid is going to burn your hands, burn your skin, the vapors will burn your lungs. So what kind of, oh right, you guys don't have acids. Battery acid. Do you guys have battery powered forklifts here? So there's some acid on site. So maybe a little spill kit would be a good thing. We'll add that to the list of projects that we've given Shauna today. Oftentimes they'll change color, but read the bag, make sure that that's part of the instructions. And specific instructions will be there for every single acid-only kit. We'll talk with Shauna quite literally and get like a small kit that'll fit in a 5-gallon pail that has the right gloves and an apron and goggles and stuff like that, so that you can clean up a battery spill if necessary. Now, I understand you guys don't have any of these. The overpack drums. Usually these contain 95 gallons. Oftentimes I've bought spill kits and all of the spill kit stuff comes in these. Your wheelie drums are much nicer for going from spot to spot than this. But these have an advantage. If you bump one of these 45-gallon drums with a barrel, put a hole in it, it's gonna leak. So the first thing that you need to do is tilt this barrel over on its side. This is actually not a great way to do this, because A, he's got to pick up this thing and flip it over, and it's probably about 60 pounds. And then he's going to pick the whole thing up and stand it back up, which is just not possible with a 45-gallon drum. Or not possible for me. Shauna, sure, but not everyone strong as Shauna. So this spill would be completely contained. What Reg and I would do is we would take that drum and tilt it over, making sure that the hole is pointed up. If the hole is pointed up, you're not leaking any more material. Then we would stand on either side of the drum, bring the overpack over and slide it in so that the drum is inside the overpack. And then with two people, you've got good handles to stand it up. You should also be able to get either forks in here, or you've got a drum lifter attachment for the forklifts that you can use to stand that up. If you end up with one of these, you've got to open them regularly. Temperature changes will create a vacuum inside, so getting that lid off becomes extremely difficult. And it's got these little things here. You can literally put a bar on there and then use that for extra leverage. And then don't squish them. You'll see these things with 60, 70, 80 pounds of stuff stored on top, and that's just packing those threads really tight, because this needs to be watertight so the threads are tight with them. This is a drain cover. Do you guys have drains in the floor anywhere? No? No places where spills will run out? That's wonderful. Do you have any drains in the parking lot? Do you store any chemicals outside? That was a trick question, I know you do. So no drains in the parking lot, all of the stormwater just ends up in the ditches. Okay, so runoff from your parking lot will end up in the ditch instead of the stormwater system. Well, a release to the ditch or waterways means that you have to report that spill to Manitoba Conservation. I can't remember what the actual department is called now. They've had a reorganization, a shakeup in the last couple of years. And so it's got a different name, but still, you have to report that to the government. We don't want that. So grabbing these socks and putting them around the spill to prevent it from migrating. I once had a salesperson come on site and say, oh, I hit a big chunk of scrap metal as I was pulling in. I think my gas tank's leaking. Come out and sure enough, 60 liters of gas in our parking lot. But it was at the middle of break. We got a bunch of smokers out. So I was like, hey, I'm just gonna stay here and make sure nobody, lights up and turns this into an explosion rather than a spill. Maintenance manager thought that, well, that was silly. We're just gonna dilute it. So he grabbed the fire hose, let her rip. So instead of 60 liters of gasoline I had to pick up 500 liters of gas and water, which was running towards our storm ditch. So what we did there was grab the skid steer, pick up a load of sand, drop that in the ditch to stop it from going, get the oil-only pads. We actually had to call our salesperson in and say, okay, we'll give you a big bunch of money if you come in and prevent us from having to call Manitoba Conservation. He had stuff in his garage. It was 6 o'clock at night, like it was an ordeal. You don't want to dilute, you just want to contain and then clean. Do you guys have anywhere where you've got pipes moving material? Yeah, there's tons of places. In and around the paint lines, there's hard piping. But even flexible piping is the same thing. This is a little neoprene patch. You put that around, you put the clamp on, you tighten it up. It's not fixed, but it's not spilling everywhere. And that's the same thing with the wrap. This works much better with hydrocarbons and low pressure hydrocarbons. So it can't be shooting out, it's gotta be a dribble. This isn't fixed, it's just enough for now. Do you guys have spill pallets?
Yes.
Does this spill pallet have enough capacity? Now, if you're gonna hit one of these with a forklift, you're probably gonna poke a hole in one, not all three or all four. Fingers crossed. I like the joke, back up till it sounds expensive. But after you hit the first one, you're not gonna continue on and punch through to get the second one. This needs to have 110% capacity of one of these drums. So, does this have that capacity? Maybe. We can't see the other side. It's possible to get a bladder for these so that this is how much space it takes up. But in the event of a spill, as it starts to fill up, a little extra pouch will pop out and it'll fill up that pouch as well as the inside of the drum or the inside of the pallet. This is a nice storage solution for storing it inside racking. You guys don't have any of these, which is good because these ones are really expensive and heavy and they're always in the way. This is nice. This is a very low profile. It's got the little ramp to get the dolly and the drums up there, but all three of these pallets are connected by pipes. So the capacity of a spill here isn't just one spill deck, it's all three. That makes it really nice, very convenient. And then here's an example where it's got an external reservoir as well. So these are connected and then it also has the reservoir. Mentioned you guys store chemicals outside. Sometimes they don't like being exposed to the sun. Today is pretty sure it's gonna snow, but it started out thinking it was gonna rain. So while it was raining, you've got those drums out there. Sometimes the screw-on bung cap, sometimes it's not replaced properly. Sometimes it's not replaced at all. And so then you end up with contamination. This prevents that. Sometimes they react, the chemicals inside will react with heat or the extreme temperature change or sunlight, that UV energy. And so you're going to want to make sure that you've got it appropriately protected. I love this thing. I've never been able to justify buying it because it's a million times more expensive. But this is basically like the world's most expensive gummy snake. It's a really heavy duty. This piece here weighs about 60 pounds, 6 feet long, about that big around. And all it is a mobile berm. So you can put it around a piece of equipment that leaks and contain the spill to one spot. This is really nice for outside storage. And we sort of go through this because we don't want you guys to have emergency spills. And Shauna can't be everywhere. So you're going to see places where we've got existing spills long before Shauna does because you're there working around it. So for outside storage, this is held up by little metal rods that are bent into an L. And if I wanted to drive the forklift in there, I would just pull 5 or 6 of those rods out, drive it in, drop the pallet down, back it out, and then put the little rods back in, and it's good. This is a version of that same thing, but it's got a filter on it. Water can pass through, hydrocarbons can't. It's going to be stored outside. Well, it'll be filled up with water all the time. Nope, there's a drain for that. Really cool. Up in there. Now this, because it's storing flammable materials, it's going to end up being grounded and bonded. Are you guys familiar with grounding? Fantastic. Are you familiar with bonding? That's where you light the fire and you grab the marshmallows and everyone sings campfires. Different one. So this ground rod would be punched literally into the ground so that any static discharge, because when you're moving flammable liquids from one container to the next, you're actually creating static. Has anyone seen a video of someone getting in and out of their car while they're filling up the gas station? They go to grab the pump handle and all of a sudden, woof, there's fire. The reason is flammable liquids moving through hoses like that create static electricity. And then when that person goes to touch the metal of their car somewhere around the pump, it gives off that spark. We want to avoid that. That prevents it. Now, it prevents it for everything that's connected to it. When I take from here and I hand crank that little pump and it spills into the container that grounding doesn't exist there. And it doesn't exist in the container when you're splash filling. So what you would do is you would take another clamp onto the drum that's connected to the ground system, then a little wire connected to a copper pipe, and you put that in the thing that you're filling, and that's the bonding to the grounding system. And again, we want to work smarter, not harder. And so 5S, you guys are familiar with 5S? You guys are great at 5S, to be perfectly honest. In fact, on a regular basis, I'll find other plant managers and say, hey, you should talk to Frank. They do really cool stuff at his place. And Frank is always gracious and says, yes, come on down, absolutely. It's not just cleaning. It's the organization, it's the planning. Your workstation, when it's clean, you're going to have fewer spills. How much do you need at your workstation, that Kanban system? Do you need 9 5-gallon pails? Do you need a 45-gallon drum? Or can there be a central station that you go and fill up at and then bring just what you need for that shift back to your workstation? So if you spill 4 hours worth instead of 9 months worth. That's often makes the biggest difference for you. And then, look around. See the places where there's stains on the floor. That's where the spills are happening. Can you capture it in some way? Can you make it so that those spills aren't uncontrolled? And with that, we are done here. Everyone stayed awake, nicely done. It is very close to lunchtime. And the only thing standing between you and lunch other than the hour it takes for you to get to your actual break, is for us to go out onto the shop floor and do a little bit of a practical thing. So, does anyone want to volunteer to be the broom operator? Yeah, come on in. It's pretty loud over here. So we're good, right? We're done? Shut her down? Head to break? It feels like coffee time. No, no. Now, if this wasn't just water, I would spread it out until it was completely covered and I couldn't see any color. But because this is water and I'm a cheap Manitoban, I'm not going to use all the material that's needed. So ordinarily, once it's completely covered, we leave it for a little bit. Let it absorb and soak in a bunch of that stuff. But it's still there. Concrete is porous. It's got tiny holes in it, and that liquid has gotten into those tiny holes at this point. So our next step, once it has sat on there for 5, 10, 15 minutes, it literally just work it in with your boot. And that 5 seconds, you can see it's already made a difference in that one spot. You don't have to work it in with your boot. And of course, if it's a nasty chemical, you're going to want to not use the boot. You can just use your broom. Work it back and forth. I'm pressing down at the same time, not just swinging it back and forth. On a regular basis, the material that's against the concrete is going to get used up. So you want to bring fresh material in and work it back into the spill. And you can see there, we're almost 100% dry already. And there you are. So the process doesn't change regardless of what chemical. You just got to leave it sit for 5, 10 minutes before you start working it back and forth. So now this is done, right? So we'll leave this here for night shift to clean up. Okay, yeah, probably, but no. Once you're done cleaning it up, what would you do with it? Is this stuff going to be safe to dispose of? If you wouldn't throw the chemical in the garbage, you shouldn't throw the material in the garbage. Probably going to need to send it to Miller. Do you guys use Miller? Miller for your environmental disposals? Yeah, they're so close and so good. Yeah, so you would bag this up in a special bag, not whatever's lying around, and then let Shauna know and she'll get it sent off to Miller or whoever does your actual disposals. Any questions?